Hello, and welcome to the first ever Downcrawl solo play stream. I'm Aaron A. Reed, I'm the creator of the game, and I'm so happy to be showing off this new edition today. Um, waiting for folks to trickle in, I'll just get some housekeeping stuff out of the way. So this stream will be recorded for later viewing, so you're welcome to watch it that way as well. Um, One thing I'll tell you guys up front is I'm pretty new to streaming, so if anything seems to be going catastrophically wrong, like my mic drops out or anything, do please let me know in the chat, and I will do my best to get it fixed. Hopefully folks can hear me now okay. If anyone's in the chat and anything seems off, please let me know. Otherwise, I will just barrel forward. So, what are we doing today? We're going to be starting a new campaign of the new edition of Downcrawl. So, what is Downcrawl? Back in 2017, I think, I'd created this tabletop role-playing supplement for underworld adventures in a place called the Deep Deep Down. I actually have a copy of the original version here. So this is a very slim book, 60 pages, I think, that just kind of with some tips and tricks to, help you run a sort of underground exploration campaign. And this was actually really popular. Way more, people were interested in this than I expected, which was amazing. I eventually ended up releasing another game in the series called Skycrawl. And in the process of that, I had made some tweaks and improvements. So I eventually thought I would go back to Downcrawl and port some of those back and, just do a little tweaks, help it, improve a little bit. And it ended up basically being a page one rewrite of the entire game. So the new version is more than twice as long. I think every single mechanic and idea in the game has been kind of reworked, revised, improved. I think it plays a ton better now. It's super exciting. And there's going to be a crowdfunding campaign for the new version that starts in a couple weeks. So really excited about that. One of the improvements in Downcrawl 2nd Edition is that it now has 3 different ways you can play it. So there's kind of traditional mode where you've got a game master who has the rule book and is preparing adventures in advance. There's a new collaborative mode where there's no game master and everyone at the table is kind of working together to invent new places as you explore, which is a ton of fun. But then the third mode is for solo players. And this is a playstyle that, it's kind of been around in one form or another for a really long time. But it really kind of, I think, hit its stride during the pandemic when so many people couldn't roleplay in person and were maybe getting, burned out on Zoom calls or whatever. And I'd never really tried solo role-playing games until around that time. And it's a really cool thing because it's actually very different than role-playing in a group. It's kind of a different, art form, a different kind of game entirely. It can be really intense and introspective because it's just you and your character exploring the world, and you can go as slow or fast as you want with as much or as little detail as you want. It's a really interesting mode of play. And that's what we're going to be doing today as solo Downcrawl. So let's get into it. I'm going to be starting a brand new solo Downcrawl game today. I've prepared nothing in advance. I have no idea what's going to happen. We're going to create a new world from scratch, new places, people, a character, and take them on an adventure and see what happens. Let me just say a little about my setup here. So there are various kinds of cards here that you'll see that I'll explain as we go along. In the upper left over here is a PDF of the current draft of the rules. This also exists in analog form. In fact, here's a cool spiral bound version of the rules. This is a temp cover, but this is just sort of all of the moves and tables that you need when you play. And this is really handy because you can kind of just have it laid flat on the table while you're playing for easy reference. We're not going to use that today because, with camera resolutions and stuff, I think the digital version will be easier to read. But that spiral bound book is a cool perk that is coming in the crowdfunding campaign, which I'm excited to unveil in a few weeks. So we'll be using that. This is all, the PDF's all hyperlinked, so we can jump around to different sections as we need. So that's what's going on up in that window. Other stuff I should explain. So the Downcrawl deck is a very cool optional part of the new version of the game. That basically has all of the tables from the game between the two sides. Each card has one result from each table. So it takes a bit to sort of, learn where on the cards each table result is. But once you have that mastered, you can get prompts super quickly. So we'll be using a ton of that today. It's a lot of fun. There's also a standalone game that uses those cards called Downcrawl Worlds. That's just kind of about world building. So if you get the cards, you get that game too, which is a lot of fun. Okay, I think that's all the the kind of logistics stuff. I've got a couple tokens that I'll use when we get to the right moment. I do have some dice because there are a few things that aren't on the cards that we might use dice for. And I might switch to using dice back and forth a few times just to see how you can do the same things you're doing with the cards with the rule book too. Let's jump into it. I'm not really going to sort of explain the rules or anything in advance. We'll just learn them as we go. And there's a chapter of the new version of the game called Session 0 that kind of helps us do exactly that. It sort of helps us learn how to play as we go and as we build our world. So yeah, let's jump into it. We've got our materials here. It recommends reading this how to crawl section. I think the one thing from there that it might be useful to talk about is, so there's moves, which are sort of procedures for how to do things. And then there's tables, which is where you get random results. And tables have this terminology called asking the table. And with dice, we would click on that link or turn to that page in the book, roll d6s, and then get a result that way. With the cards, we ask by finding that word and looking at the results. So this is ask terrain. I know because I've used these cards a lot that terrain is red. So over here, I find this result caverns. So that's asking terrain. And I think that's pretty much all the terminology from this section we need to know. So let's jump back to where we were. Okay. The world of Downcrawl is vast, challenging, weird, and isolated are the bullet points. It's sort of this infinite underground space where it's so far from the surface that people have forgotten it even existed. You know, the idea of a sun in the sky are just legends if people have heard of them at all. Alice in Wonderland kind of vibes. I've got Del Toro, Mieville, Peele, Spielberg, Cronenberg. So, weird and kind of adventure-y. We're going to be, in a solo game, tone and safety is more sort of up to you. I'm, probably not going to go into any especially dark territory here on this stream. But I do like to keep things weird. So we'll stay in that. When you're playing in a group, you can start a thing called the no thank you list, which is if anything comes up that you just don't want in your game. My classic example for that is spiders. If someone, starts saying, what if my character was like a 12-foot tall spider? Someone else can say, ooh, no thank you. Let's write giant spiders on the no thank you list. And that just kind of helps keep everyone on the same page about, what you do and don't want to see in your story. So again, because it's sort of a solo game, I'm going to skip over that. Okay, so the first real thing we're going to do here is brainstorming ideas. And there's two ways to do this, either with the Downcrawl deck or without. We have it, so we're going to use that. And then the other thing is that there's two ways to do this, or there's ways to do this depending on how many players you have. So for solo players, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw 8 cards here. So I can start all the way over here. Actually, I'll do these in a stack and then I'll spread them out. Held up more. 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. So ideas are these yellow words. And we're going to pick 5 of them to play. So we've got statues, ministry, golems, worms, doctrine, beetles, roads, and ghosts. Okay. Well, definitely ghosts. I like that. Let's start with that. Statues are always good. Doctrine seems interesting. The something doctrine, or we could have interesting philosophies in play. I always like roads. Ministry is a little close to doctrine, maybe. Let's go with beetles. Okay. I'm going to keep hold of the rest of these cards, but these are my first 5 ideas. Beetles, roads, doctrine, statues, and ghosts. Okay. So now I'm going to flip over my remaining cards as the rules instruct. And there's an addendum here for solo players. I'm going to draw 4 more. So let me add 4 more. And on the back of these, we have qualities, which, among other things, are things that compare well with ideas. And I'm going to pick 5 of these to play. So we've got wind up, exiled, crystal, rival, riddle, lost, and joyful. And I'm going to move some of my other materials over here just to make room. Now, we're not sort of immediately trying to pair these. We're just looking at these words in isolation for now. I love a good riddle. Let's grab that one. Lost is always fun. Crystal. Crystal is nice. Let's go with crystal. Wind up. Yes, please. And from these last three, sorry, I'll try to keep these more centered. Let's go with joyful. That's kind of maybe unexpected. Okay. Awesome. So in group play, you could have a sort of no thank you point at this point where someone could say like, let's not do living statues. Those creep me out. But I picked all these cards, so one would expect that I am fine with all of them. Okay, so we're going to skip forward now to back to rejoining after the book versus cards version. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to join up these cards. And you don't have to join qualities to ideas. You can join any two cards that sound good. And then what we'll end up with is 5 sort of 2-word ideas. Okay, so let's see what we got here. The first thing that jumped out to me was Crystal Doctrine. I don't know what that is, but I like it. The Crystal Doctrine is going to somehow be a part of this world. Yes, let's go with that. Ooh, okay, so these are 2 ideas, so you just need to tweak the verbiage a little bit. But let's say there are road beetles in this world. Again, we don't know what any of these things are yet. We're going to find out as we play, but I think there are road beetles. And I'm sort of cognizant now that I've got 2 qualities to match. What about joyful riddles? That's kind of cool. Let's say that. Joyful riddles. Okay. So we could do now wind up statues or wind up ghosts. Wind up ghosts is sort of intriguing because that's sort of tricky to imagine. Let's go with it. I always like the exciting thing, or you know, the more difficult thing. Wind up ghosts. We'll figure out what the hell that means. And then lost statues. So these are our 5 ideas. Joyful riddles, road beetles, the Crystal Doctrine, lost statues, and wind up ghosts. And what we're going to do now, let me just scroll down the rules a little bit more, is as we go through the rest of the world and character creation, we can do a thing at any time called stealing an idea, which is where we take one of these and use it instead of rolling on a table or instead of, inventing something. Maybe, one of these is a justification to why our character works a certain way, or, a bit of backstory or something. So yeah, stealing an idea. And once we have stolen all 5 of these ideas, we'll be in good shape. Excellent. Okay, I'm excited about this already. This is good stuff. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create our first volume. So volumes are sort of how Downcrawl describes spaces. A volume, think of like a 3-dimensional volume, a 3-dimensional space, right? Because the deep, deep down goes up, it goes down, it goes left, right, it goes in all directions. So a volume is sort of an area, a region that might be, have some dominant force, like it's the domain of a particular dragon, it might be a town, it might be a dungeon, it could be, all kinds of things. But volume's kind of the primary sort of things we put in our map of Downcrawl. So we're going to make our first volume. We did do this already, so we learned how to ask. So we're going to start by determining the volume's first 2 details. And we do that by asking theme and then by asking aspect plus terrain. So yeah, let's start with theme. So I'm going to draw a card from the deck. So every card has actually 2 themes on it. So if we flip it over, we get a second theme. So we can choose between either Great City for our first volume or Monumental Project. I like starting with a city, starting with a great city. Let's go with that. That seems like a good solid foundation. Okay, and then we need an aspect plus a terrain. And this, I'm just going to grab the whole deck here. This is a cool thing. You kind of get this with quality and idea here. But whenever there's tables that you often consult together, those are printed on opposite sides of the cards and color-coded. So all you need to do is flip over the top card and just make sure the symbol lines up, and you have your prompt. So aspect plus terrain, we have here crumbling catacombs. Cool. So we have a great city built within crumbling catacombs. That could not be more Downcrawl. I love this so much. Excellent. What a perfect first volume. Okay. So these cards that I moved off to the side, you can totally just use index cards for these. You don't have to use anything fancy. But these are sort of templates for volumes and folk, which we'll get to later, that I just printed out at home here. And there's going to be print and play stuff you can get with the game. And this just kind of reminds us of the stuff about volumes we need to track. So I'm going to use these instead of blank index card. Okay, so I'm skipping ahead just a little bit here. The next thing we want to do is we want to sort of combine these two details and tell the concept for this place. So it's a great city in the midst of crumbling catacombs. I'm trying to decide if the city, it's like a ruined city, like it used to be great and it's now crumbled into ruin, or if it's a city that's sort of like deliberately been built, in this catacomb space. That feels kind of cool. I wonder if they're like trying to find some resource, like they're here because there's powerful undead here, or there's some like it could be sort of like a Diablo situation where people go into these catacombs to search for treasure and the city's kind of built up around it. I like that. Let's go with that. That seems really cool. Okay. We want to name this volume next. And I always, for names, people can get really hung up on trying to think of the perfect name. I always just try to go with the first stupidest thing I can think of. Catacomb City seems fine. Let's go with that. So now we're going to create a map deck card, which is what this is. So each volume you'll have a card, and there's certain mechanics where you'll draw from the map deck to get a random place, and it's also just a useful reference of all the places you've created. Okay, so this is Catacomb City. And I realize it's a little tricky to read this stuff on stream, depending on what your resolution is, but hopefully it's about big enough that you can at least remember what it's supposed to be. It's got a theme of great city. You can see there's 6 spaces for details here. There's 3 kinds of details, and a volume is what's called fully defined once you have each of these 6 boxes filled out. But we'll kind of get to that as we go. A key thing is we're not going to completely invent this place yet. We're just kind of creating this first spark of it, and then as we play, we'll have more opportunities to sort of iteratively learn more about it. So it's a great city. And the first terrain type we know is crumbling catacombs. I am really into this place already. Excellent. Okay. So the next thing we do is we just do this 2 more times until we have 3 volumes. So our first volume is Catacomb City. I'm going to discard these Downcrawl deck cards. And then we'll go again. And if folks in chat have suggestions for better names than my stupid names, feel free to shout them out. But I will just go with whatever my little heart tells me is good. So, okay, new theme. We've got either Necropolis, well, we kind of just did that, or Isolationist. So a place that's kind of, deliberately staying remote, kind of xenophobic maybe. Let's go with that, just because that's more different. And then for terrain, we've got lava ruins. So it's interesting that we have both catacombs and ruins. I kind of like that. That's kind of suggesting to me that this is a world sort of in decline, or it's a world filled with ancient relics of bygone times. That's kind of cool. And lava ruins. That's really neat. Maybe like in the bowels of a volcano or something. Actually, or maybe like an eruption happened, and that's why there are ruins. So this is sort of like, immediate aftermath of Pompeii kind of situation. And Isolationist is interesting with that. So maybe maybe it's something like the people who still live here have really just closed themselves off from the outside world. Maybe it's a vibe of no one helped us when we had this terrible disaster, so we're just gonna shut the gates and retreat into the ruins of our city that are half covered by lava flows now, and sulk. Okay, this is great. Get a new map deck card. Does anyone have a good idea for a name for this place while I'm writing down these first 2 details? Feel free to suggest it. We've got Isolationist, and we've got Lava Ruins. Okay. So The only thing that's coming to mind is something like fire, lonely lava ruins. um, yeah. The nice thing about having something really obvious is that it's really easy to remember what that place is. Sometimes if names get really cutesy, you're like, now which place was Zelborafor again? What about there's something about like loan that I do really like. Loan, and we have one that's called City. Dunkelheit. Nice. I'm just gonna call this Lone Mountain, and we will pretend that's not close to anything from Tolkien, but this is an entirely different world. So we have Lone Mountain. Oh, German for darkness. Nice, nice, nice. Okay, cool. So we've got Catacomb City and Lone Mountain. We will discard one more time. Let's just try to line these up before I do that so that they're in order. And go one last time for a third volume. One last time for now. We'll definitely find more cool things as we explore. Okay, theme. We've got Last Bastion or The Lair of an Ancient Beast. Yeah, I think let's go with that one. Definitely. Okay, and then for terrain, we get Cramped Burrows. Perfect. That's perfect. All right. The Lair of an Ancient Beast and Cramped Burrows. So those go together pretty well, for sure. I'm trying to think of some interesting twist on that. So cramped, so ancient beast sounds like something huge, right? But then cramped suggests something smaller, which is kind of an interesting contrast. I wonder if this is a beast that like changes size, or like it's really small when it hibernates, but then when it emerges, like it grows and grows until it can't fit in its lair anymore, and then it kind of oozes out. That's kind of weird. Yeah, let's go with something like that. Excellent. Okay, so theme, we have Lair of Ancient Beast, and terrain we have Cramped Burrows. I'm just going to make a note also to myself on the back of this. Grows larger upon emerging. Okay. Cool. So we have our first 3 volumes. We want to name this layer. I used the word ooze. I think I'm going to stick with that. Let's call this let's call this the Ooze Hollows. The one embarrassing thing about this stream is how often I just amuse the hell out of myself with my own game. It's probably kind of embarrassing, but it's a good time. I think it's a good time. Okay, great. So we have 3 volumes. We've sort of seeded the beginning of our world, which is awesome. Okay, so let's scroll down here a bit. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to learn about is the map. So, and I totally forgot. The PDF actually says this, and I just skipped over it, but we can steal an idea at any time. So I could have stolen one of these ideas for any of these prompts that I drew, and I just got so excited with the cards I drew that I forgot about that. But I'll try to remember to do that going forward, because we have all these cool ideas up here that we want to incorporate. Okay, so the map. In addition to tracking the details about the volumes here, we also track them on a map. I'm going to slide my ideas over a little bit to expose some map space. So the map, sort of, the most important thing about the map is not necessarily things like the exact position of your volumes or anything like that. It's more about routes between them and how difficult places are to get to. And routes is a big thing. There's as we explore the world, you'll learn about new routes. Old routes will go away. So those are important. So we're going to transfer each of these to our map real quick. So let's put Catacomb City sort of centrally. We'll put the lone mountain over here, maybe. And then we'll say the ooze hollows is up here. Okay. Again, that's probably a little small to read, but I'll point things out as necessary as we move forward. Okay, so a stat that volumes have that's actually on these cards that I didn't explain yet is a thing called remoteness, which sort of represents how difficult a place is to get to. So we need to decide a remoteness for each of these three places. And the remotenesses are known, sheltered, and secret. And it's pretty self-explanatory. Secret places are pretty hard to get to and can have pretty few routes to them. Known places are easier to get to and can connect to more places. So I think for Catacomb City, it makes sense for that to be known since it's a city. So let's go ahead and mark that as known. The Lone Mountain's isolationist. That doesn't necessarily mean it's hard to get to, but it could be. So let's make that sheltered, the Lone Mountain, and then we'll make the Ooze Hollows secret. I just noticed too. This is a minor point, but these are a slightly older version, so they have a different number than what you're seeing on the screen. That's fine. Just roll with it. I'll explain everything. Cool. So we have kind of one of each kind, and there's a system that this link here is talking about. If we jump to for kind of on your map, helping you remember the remoteness and how that affects your ability to travel. I think we'll explain that the first time we get to a journey. So we're going to skip over that for now. The thing we need to do at this point is add 2 route lines to our map, connecting these volumes in some way. And the key thing is that the Ooze Hollows can only connect to one thing. It also maybe is not connected to anything, which means it's it's still possible to reach, but it's a difficult and dangerous journey because there's no known routes to it. So I think, the most obvious thing is to connect Catacomb City and Lone Mountain, so we'll do that. The rules tell you should add map routes in pencil because you're going to be erasing them and changing them. Pencil's harder to see on stream, so we'll just cross things out if we need to, and the map will get a little, little love, a little well used. It'll be great. Okay, and then for our second route, we could either connect the Ooze Hollows to Catacomb City. Let's connect it to Catacomb City. I kind of like that as a place that's like kind of well connected, and it's got a lot of places connected to it. Sweet. Okay. So we've kind of seeded the beginning of our map, which is cool. Again, as we play and explore, we'll find more places. The next thing we're going to do is create some folk. So this is kind of a cool thing about Downcrawl that I like, is rather than there being sort of standard fantasy races like elves and dwarves and gnomes or whatever, you make up your own peoples for each Downcrawl game. So each game has its own kind of unique set of people that occupy this particular down. So folk are what those are called, and we're going to do kind of a similar process to create some folk. So I'm going to collapse our volume cards into our volume deck up here. And again, you can just use index cards for these, but I have printed out some. Color coding is kind of nice, especially when we're doing a visual medium like this. And I will remember this time that I can steal an idea from the amazing ideas we have on the table. Okay. So how do we make folk? We're going to get 3 details: appearance, concept, and reputation. Okay, so all the folk stuff is blue, I happen to know, so that helps. Okay, so this folk is unusually large. It's the first thing we know about them. Okay. Let's grab a folk concept. The autofocus do its thing. Okay, these people are great makers in some domain. War, architecture, food, textiles. We can also make up our own whenever we see these italics like this. Okay, these unusually large people, I think they're great makers of architecture. I like that. They build these, maybe you like call them in if you need your massive temples built or whatever, because they are big enough and strong enough that they can schlep these huge blocks of stone around and do stuff like that. That's pretty cool. Okay. And then the third thing we need for a new folk is a reputation. These people are superstitious. That's kind of cool. So they're these giant builders, but they have, maybe a lot of like rituals and traditions. I'm almost thinking like the Masons, right? Like they're this ancient society of builders, and they have all these secret handshakes and old traditions, going back hundreds of years or whatever that outsiders, don't understand. Okay, that's pretty cool. I like this already. Okay, so we've already kind of married these details. Again, we want to name this folk. I just like the builders. That's really straightforward. So let's go with that. The builders. They are unusually large. And again, we will learn more about the builders as we continue to play. But this is sort of the first part of what we know about them. They are great architects, and they are superstitious. Awesome. Cool. I like these guys. Okay. And then same thing for volumes. We're going to make 2 more folk. Oh, stealing ideas. I'll remember this time. Yes, can the wind-up ghost be a folk? Excellent notion. Let's do that. So we have a folk that are wind-up ghosts. So instead of drawing a folk concept, we'll have that be the concept. Well, actually, let's have that be the appearance. That feels like that's more likely to intersect with appearance. Okay. So for concept, they want to destroy either a resource or an idea. Oh, come on, focus in on that. So sometimes we get these things that tell us to draw a second card. So let's draw an idea. They want to destroy witches. The ghosts and witches are arch rivals in this world. Fantastic. Okay. I love it. And then finally, they need a reputation, which is they are moralizing. Oh, so maybe they don't like the witches because the witches are, go against some dictate they have, or the witches, they don't think they're good people. Yes. Okay. This is good. Okay. Appearance, wind up ghosts. Thank y'all for reminding me to steal ideas. Concept, want to destroy witches. And they are moralizing. Perfect. Ha ha ha. Excellent. Okay. One more time. One more folk. All right. Are there any other ideas we might want to steal? So Lost Statues feels like it could be a folk. Road Beetles. Oh, this is off the screen now. Sorry. Road Beetles could well be a folk. That could be interesting. And then Joyful Riddles is the other one we have. So yeah, I kind of love. I was thinking of them more as like a monster and obstacle, but I love Road Beetles as an actual folk in the game. Let's do that. Okay, so again, we're gonna steal that instead of appearance. So we still need a concept. Okay, they have a complex relationship with a resource or an idea. Let's do resource. They have a complex relationship with reason. This is this down here. So that could be almost like a Mad Hatter kind of situation, right? Like their idea about, as all road beetles do, yes. Yeah, I kind of like the idea that they have their own weird logic, and to outsiders it sort of seems, like they're not, right in the head, but it all makes sense to them. That's pretty good. Okay. And then what's their reputation? They're scatterbrained. Perfect. Yep, that floats right along with that. Okay. This is great. I'm just gonna call this folk the Road Beetles. Oh, I forgot to name the wind-up ghosts. We'll come back to that in a sec. Let's just call these folk Road Beetles, because again, easy to remember which one they are. That is in fact their appearance. They are beetles. I'm imagining like, person-sized beetles, but we'll see. Our concept is complex relationship with reason. And their reputation is scatterbrained. Yeah. So yeah, I'm definitely imagining, you come across a road beetle in the middle of a journey. It's maybe claimed some route or some path or something, and it invites you to, a tea party or to some a soiree before it will let you go on. And how quickly you can extricate yourself from that situation may affect your the rest of your journey in some meaningful way. Okay, this is good. We need to name the wind-up ghosts. Who want to destroy witches and are moralizing. Actually, I did kind of skip past that a little bit. I didn't really marry these ideas together very well. What does wind-up ghosts mean? Are they like ghosts of like wind-up constructs or something? Like they were like living toys given souls, but now they're dead? Possessed wind-up toys? Yeah, thinking along similar lines. Yeah, possessed wind-up toys is pretty good. Yeah. Oh, and maybe did the witches create them, or like they want to destroy their creators? Or did the witches? Maybe the witches want to control them. Like the witches, think that they're, yeah, like they're just like free labor. But the wind-up toys are like, no, we have souls. And yeah, and they've developed like this firm belief about what's right and wrong, right? Hence moralizing. Yeah, I kind of like this. Okay. And I'm going to do something and this is actually totally in the rules, legit to do in Downcrawl, is if as an idea develops, it's totally fine to change the prompt to fit it better. So I'm actually going to change wind-up ghosts here, as cool as that was in isolation, to wind-up toys, because I think we've taken that in a slightly different direction, which I like. And so for a name, how are they wound up? Yeah, that's a really interesting question. They may have interesting relationship with other folks. Yeah, we'll explore that. I think that they're called. I want to say something like haunted mainsprings. That's good. Yeah, like I do like mainsprings. Let's just go with that. Let's just say the mainsprings. That's great. Thank you for the suggestion. The mainsprings. Yeah, that's really juicy. There's a lot to get into there. Awesome. So we've got the mainsprings, the road beetles, and the builders. Perfect. Okay. So that was kind of a lot, but we now have 3 volumes and 3 folk, and we're kind of ready to move forward. So that's awesome. We've still got some ideas that we can steal, and we still have more to do with character creation and stuff moving forward, but we've kind of seeded the core of our world, which is shaping up to be pretty cool. So yeah, let's move right along. Whoops. Okay, so creating characters, or a character in this case, because you can, in theory, play a solo game with like a whole party of people, but I tend to like to have just one character, and then maybe some friends that you make along the way. Who knows? But we're going to start with one. One thing it notes here is that, Downcrawl, the first version of Downcrawl was totally just like an add-on that you could combine with any existing role-playing system, so you could mash it up with your D&D campaign or any other system you were using. That's still true for Downcrawl 2nd edition, but it also now has its own built-in core system, so you don't need another game to play it, which is kind of a nice feature. And I am going to use that system for this. So it's kind of a deliberately minimal system. It's inspired by Fate, if you've played that. It's called Sliver of Fate, because it just steals like a little bit of ideas from Fate. And like I said, it's deliberately very minimalist. You can fit a character sheet on an index card. So Sliver of Fate's what we're going to be using. We're not actually going to create our character just yet, but the rules do want us to just make sure we know what core system we're using. My back button on the PDF viewer isn't working, which is annoying, so I'll have to scroll back to where we were. Okay. Okay, so we're going to be using Sliver of Fate. The two things that you just sort of need to understand, Downcrawl systems mostly are kind of independent of your core system, but there's 2 points where they intersect. Some moves will give you bonuses or penalties, and you just sort of need to decide what that corresponds to in your system. So if you were playing D&D, for example, a bonus might just be a +2 to your die roll, right? Really straightforward. And similarly, damage. Some moves might give you damage, and you need to decide what that corresponds to. So these both have things in Sliver of Fate. When we get to them, we'll explain what they are. But it's very nice because really, other than those two things, your core system and Downcrawl they're just sort of not concerned with the same things, right? Downcrawl is about how journeys work, and it's about creating places and peoples. And then your core system might be about things like how combat works and how long it takes you to regain your spells and what spells you have, etc. So they're kind of, they just kind of slot together nicely in most cases, which is kind of cool. Okay, so character concepts. So you can import an existing character into the Downcrawl universe if, for example, you want to add a Underdarky segment to your ongoing campaign. Or you can start with fresh characters, which is what we're going to do today. So it says pause a moment to talk about what kind of hero you're going to play. And some classic differentiators are, maybe we're surface folk who are new to this strange world and don't understand what's going on, kind of fish out of water story. We might be lifelong natives, and there's a couple other ideas here. I always really like to play weirdos who have lived in the deep down their whole life. So I think I'm going to make a character who is one of these three kinds of peoples. These could all be really interesting characters, actually. Road beetles, mainspring toys, builders. I'm kind of drawn to mainsprings. I want to make a character who's a wind-up toy who is wandering loose in the world and hates witches for some reason that we'll figure out. That seems really juicy. There's so much there about like wanting to meet your maker or like, what was I made for? Yeah, that seems really fun. Excellent. Okay. So we kind of have that as a character concept, so that's great. We need to decide our drive. What drives our character to explore the Down? And there's kind of 6 suggestions here. So find a way home, hunter or hunted, a wandering heart, saving the world, hope of reunion, trying to get back to some place or someone, or trying to learn the truth. How will I stay wound? We'll find out. Play to find out, as they say. Might be an interesting challenge. So what drives this mainspring to explore? Finding a way home could be interesting. Maybe they're, the kind of classic, they're on the other side of the world and they've heard there's a homeland of other people like them somewhere, but they just don't know how to get there. Hunter or hunted potential. Are we hunting witches? That could be pretty wild. Yeah. I always love a good wandering heart. Reunion. This could kind of be a variant on that, right? Like maybe we have a companion toy who we're made alongside and we're trying to get back to them or something. Learning the truth, big mystery. These all seem possibly interested. I kind of want to go with a hunter, just again because it's like the less obvious of the options. Like you kind of think more Pixar movie maybe with this setup, but this takes it in a slightly different direction. I think we're a witch hunter. So this is sort of like, if Geralt was a wind up jester. Like I say, I have to apologize for laughing at my own creations on this stream, but I like this. Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna go with hunter. I'm just gonna grab a card to start my character on. Leave a blank spot at top for a name, which we will get to, and just say mainspring hunter. I'm amused. All right. Excellent. Okay, so next we have to decide an answer to 3 questions. So which volume are we starting in? Okay. Oh, and while I just saw this, I'm going to say the reason that I'm hunting witches is because of the crystal doctrine. That's what tells all good mainsprings that they must hunt witches. Is the crystal doctrine. We'll explore that more later, but I'm going to go ahead and steal that. Lost statues definitely feels like it might become relevant soon, but let's hold on to that. Okay, so we got two ideas left just over here. Okay, so looking at our map again, we've got Lone Mountain. I'm just going to grab these cards to remember what these places are. Okay, so Catacomb City was our great city built amidst crumbling catacombs, right? Lone Mountain is isolationist, kind of ruined by lava, so sort of xenophobic post-Pompeii folks. And then the Ooze Hollows is the lair of an ancient beast where there are cramped burrows. So I feel like Catacomb City is a really obvious place to start. There's all kinds of reasons we could have, ended up there. It connects to a lot of other places. So let's say that's where we're going to start our adventures in Catacomb City. I'm going to keep these two cards out because this is our people, and this is where we're starting. And then I'll put the others up here for when we need them. Okay, so we're starting in Catacomb City. What's something that I love or hate about this place? So, yeah, that's an interesting question. And this is sort of, by intention, of course, forcing me to think more about who my character is. I guess, do they like being around people, presumably most of whom aren't wind up? Or is it more a thing where, they prefer being alone, no one understands them? I appreciate that lyrics are being written in the chat. This is excellent. Thank you. There's sadly no musical score for this adventure yet. We'll see what happens. I feel like they're more sort of a loner. So I think a thing that they hate about this place is there's just so many people. Just it's crowded with people, and none of them. They're so sort of unaware of what their place in the world is. They're just eating and doing these weird, gross things that meat people do, and just none of them understand what it's like. I want to go too sad goth with this character, but I think they prefer being alone on the open road to crammed into a city full of people. Okay. And then finally, why can't I stay here? Well, clearly, I think I've just gotten news that there's a witch who recently left town that I need to track down. The Crystal Doctrine tells me, I need to follow up on those leads right away, or the witches might get away. So even maybe I just got here, maybe I'm road weary, but the doctrine pulls me on, so I've got to keep moving. So yeah, okay, that seems like a good starting point. Okay, and then we're getting pretty close to being able to jump in. There's a couple more things we want to do. So first, we need to make our actual character. So if this, if we were mashing this up with D&D or something, this is the point where we'd start, rolling 3d6s. So let's jump over to, just one thing to note here that this is another interesting point where your Downcrawl game might intersect your core system, is that Downcrawl really is designed to be around kind of difficult journeys between dangerous places. So if your core system has, for example, magic spells that let you teleport, or like a ranger ability that says you can never get lost and you always have perfect navigational abilities, that's not going to really work with Downcrawl. So this sidebar here is just sort of saying, if you have something like that in your core system, talk with your GM or work out yourself, kind of an alternative that, gives you some cool power, but just not that one in particular, because your Downcrawl game will be more fun without that. Okay, let's just jump to this Sliver of Fate section and talk about how we make characters in Sliver of Fate. So it's pretty simple. So a character in Sliver of Fate is defined by four approaches. So there are four kind of stats approaches. There's forceful, focused, flashy, and fast. And we're going to be good at one of them and bad at the other, or bad at one of them also, and then neutral at two. So as your standard run of the mill wind up witch hunter, I think forceful or flashy are both pretty obvious. Let's go with flashy actually as my positive one. I'm just gonna write all four of these: forceful, focused, flashy, and fast. Okay, so I am good at being flashy. What am I bad at? So fast is actually interesting. Oh, that could really tie into like winding down or having to preserve my strength so that I don't wind down prematurely. Oh, that's cool. Let's go with that. Yeah. Okay. So I'm weak at fast. I'm great at flashy, and I'm average at forceful and focused. Okay, cool. Next, we have three aspects, and if you've ever played a fate-based game, you know aspects. They're basically just kind of descriptors for things that your characters either their skills they have, gear they have, cool stylistic things about them, cool stunts they can do. They're kind of like character-specific things you can invoke in your course of having adventures and solving problems. So, what are some good aspects? So, I think actually the crystal doctrine is a really obvious one to sort of promote into an aspect, because that'll help us remember that, and then that'll sort of encourage us to invoke that in particular situations. So it might be that maybe that even actually gives us some powers, or maybe it involves like a particular style of fighting or something. But that seems cool. So let's say the crystal doctrine. And we know that's also sort of related to witch hunting. Yeah, it'd be cool to have an aspect based around witches specifically and why we're driven to hunt them. We're kind of dancing around this, but it might be worth defining why mainsprings in general and this character in particular hates witches. We talked about the witches sort of want to use the mainsprings as like cheap labor, so maybe that's all it is. But maybe the witches go further than that. Maybe maybe they sort of like deconstruct mainstreams and build like these monstrosity, chimerical machines out of them. So from the mainspring's perspective, it's like, these abominations built from the parts of all these, dead mainsprings. From the witches' perspective, they're just like tinkers, they're making good use of all this great material that's just lying around. But that makes them, really monstrous from the mainstream's perspective. Okay, that's pretty good. I'm almost tempted to have an aspect called thou shalt not suffer a witch to live, but I don't want to tie this really into historical witch hunting per se, because that has a very different valence. What if we called it something like something, framing it more around like justice for our people? So maybe something like man, coming up with good aspect names is always so tricky. Let's just say witches. Let's just say the end of witches, and that could be something that's either invoked as like in a moment of, in a low moment, thinking about the end of witches is what drives me forward. Witches get stitches. That's pretty good. Okay. Let's go with the end of witches for now. And then a third aspect. This might be a good opportunity to define something else about the character. I'm going to discard Crystal Doctrine because we've written that down now. Can we steal an idea for this? We've still got lost statues and joyful riddles. Oh, joyful riddles is interesting. Like, does that say something about our personality? Maybe like, are we like um, a curious someone or someone who loves like solving puzzles and solving mysteries? That could be kind of interesting. Um, yeah, let's go with that. I like that. I'm gonna call this aspect just joy of riddles. And I think that says something about we're clever. We kind of like to be challenged. Good at figuring things out. Um, that's good. Okay, we're doing good. We've used all but one idea, so that's great. Yes, to the question in the chat. This will be the video will go up afterwards, so you'll be able to watch the full thing in that form. Uh, Excellent. Okay, and then the only other thing we do for character creation in Sliver of Fate is we start with 0 fate points. I got these little tokens to use to track fate points, much like in regular Fate, but a little simpler. You'll sort of use these to kind of give yourself boosts at certain moments. Since we're starting with 0, I will put 0 of these on my sheet for now, but we'll get those out later. Um, yeah, and that's pretty much it. And I'll explain how this system actually works. The first time we kind of need to make a roll or invoke a mechanic, but that's it for now. And then we're pretty much ready to begin our story. But since we're at about the halfway mark, it feels like this might be a good moment to unveil the cover art, which I promised I would do on stream. So if folks are excited to see that, maybe we can take a quick break and do that. So this is personally exciting for me because this is actually the first project that I have commissioned original art for. I've had licensed art in some of my past games, and I always enjoy paying artists to use their work. But this is the first time I commissioned like a totally original piece of art for a game, so I'm super excited. And you might have seen in my update, the artist that I hired for this is this incredible guy. He's done concept art for Marvel movies and for Pixar. And he's done book covers. And I found a piece of his that was just super evocative, and it turned out he was available in a budget and everything, so it all worked out. Without further ado, here is the full cover art spread for Downcrawl second edition. I'm going to zoom in on this so you can see all the details. But man, when he came back with this piece, I was just so in love with everything about it. So the main sort of thing here is we have this stalactite city with there's like little trains going around. It's so cool. And then we have these explorers overlooking this magma waterfall. And you can see the explorers are sort of weird little folk. There's like an antler guy and like a mushroom person. So that's kind of the cover, and then the back side has got so many cool little details. It's so great. Like there's these like skeleton musicians like playing something while this like snail with people riding in it goes in the background. It's kind of funny because when we first started talking about the art, he was like, well, what are the standard, like, what are some locations or peoples from this game? And I'm like, well, that's the thing about this game is like you make them all up each time you play. So there aren't, specific set things. So we sort of, brainstormed ideas. But a lot of this stuff he just came up with out of whole cloth. And I was so excited about it. There's like a weird newt thing over here. It's like floating jellyfish up here. There's like little airships moving between the stalactite cities. So I was super happy with how this turned out. And I'm super stoked to get the book with this art out into the world. I think it's super rad. Another cool thing is that there's going to be a softcover and a hardcover, and there's actually going to be 2 different versions of the hardcover with kind of art variants. And it's basically sort of the same image, but just recolored. So the other variant is a lot sort of redder and more kind of, the kind of magma is a more dominant element over like the kind of purple in this version. So I think that'll be a fun thing where people will kind of get a choice of which of those cover versions they like better. I'm super stoked about the cover art. Hopefully you are too. Someone mentioned a poster perk. I'm not planning on that right now, unfortunately, just because shipping posters is always such a pain in the butt. You have to either do poster tubes or ship them folded, which kind of, sucks for some people. There might be something we can do on that. Like maybe it's a sort of, available via like a, print it yourself sort of service or something. Cause yeah, it definitely is cool. And I would love it if, people could get it into more forms, but yeah, that's the cover art. I'm pretty stoked. I hope you are too. So yeah, this is, at the start of the stream, I showed the original rule book, which was art that I sort of made by myself based on public domain woodcuts, and yeah, it's it was fine, but the new art is definitely better. So yeah. So yeah, thank you all for joining me on this cover art journey. But yeah, and my plan is just to stream to the top of the hour until 7 o'clock Pacific, so one more hour. Start the actual stream or the actual game, I mean, and then yeah, if people are into it and this all goes well, which it seems to be, I might just sort of keep doing this on Thursdays from now on, and we'll just figure out what adventures our main spring hero gets up to in this deep down we've created. Cool. So let's jump into this. So we're gonna begin our adventure. So the first thing we're going to do is gain 2 tack. So tack is a resource that you have in Downcrawl, which sort of represents kind of the aggregate of like your current navigational intel, right? What you know about routes, what you know about secret places. And it's sort of a thing you gain and lose. So as you're learning more about the world, you're gaining tack, and then you sort of spend it to sort of make journeys go well. It's sort of like, using this knowledge you've acquired to help your journeys. So we'll start with 2 tack. I know I said actually I was going to use these for tracking fate points, but I think I will, because they're going to come up, about equally often. We'll see. I'm going to use these for tack, I think. So we'll just put these up here on the map. So we've got 2 tack when we start. Okay, the next thing we need to do is fully define our starting volume for asking for its remaining core details. And so as I sort of mentioned earlier, volume has 2 themes, 2 terrains, and 2 resources. And typically sort of the sort of life cycle of volumes is when you first learn about one, you'll start with, like we did at the start, you'll start with just knowing 2 things about it. And then as you're sort of learning more about the world, you might hear rumors about places you haven't been to, and learn new details about places, including as you're journeying there, you might get, additional intel. But then when you finally arrive at a place, you learn the rest of these details. And again, that's not the full sum total of knowledge about that place. You'll still keep learning more things as you go on and play. But that's kind of the sort of first draft of what that place is. So yeah, let's do that for Catacomb City. And you can kind of do these in any order. So the volume type, or the volume detail type that we don't have either one yet for this is resource. So let's do that. So I'm going to draw from the Downcrawl deck. And I have a resource of open space. Now resources are either abundant or scarce. That's kind of an additional sort of bit of data that you define. So Catacomb City, Crumbling Catacombs, I feel like open space is scarce. There aren't, a whole lot of big plazas or, open squares. Like it's all these crowded, cramped catacombs, which explains why our character is who we need to name also. We'll come back to that. Why he's sort of, feeling claustrophobic in this place. Okay, so open space is scarce. Write that down. Okay, let's get another theme of this place. So we know that it's a great city, but what else do we know about it? So our options are rebellion or poverty. Those both seem potentially interesting. I kind of like rebellion. Yeah, interesting. Maybe there's like a big power struggle going on. Yeah, there's like two factions vying for control. I think we said something about there's like a resource that people are going down into the catacombs to bring back treasure or something. So yeah, what if there was sort of like an old established sort of form of rule in Catacomb City, but because there's so much wealth and power to be extracted from the catacombs, there's sort of like a coup in progress, or like someone's kind of currently trying to overthrow this government to maybe the taxation is really heavy currently, right? And there's this sort of like populist movement to overthrow that. Okay, that's kind of cool. So I'm going to say rebellion, and then I'm just going to add populist versus taxation. Yeah, that definitely sets the stage for some interesting stuff. Yeah, Stacy kindly noted that I should have reminded folks to follow, like, and subscribe if you're enjoying this, so you can make sure to catch future streams. I'm not always the best at self promotion, so it's nice when folks remind me to do that. Okay, we need a second terrain type for Catacomb City. And one cool thing about terrains that I will mention here is that whenever you are told to draw aspect or terrain, you can instead also ask for special terrain. You can see the card helps you this with a little or symbol here. And special terrains, these two are always combinatorial, but special terrains are sort of these like more chunky, interesting one-offs. So our special terrain is boulder fields and scree. The aspect is deep mines. Deep mines is kind of like catacombs, but it might actually set up an interesting contrast. Oh, actually, this could tie into this populist rebellion in an interesting way. So maybe there's sort of like traditional dungeon delvers, but there's also like mining operations happening. And maybe increasingly like the miners are a force in this city. And that's kind of the source of this trouble, is that, we're not about these treasure hunters, bringing curses on the town and like disturbing old crypts. We're about, we're about this, generating jobs, right? Like this more steady source. That's kind of cool. Yeah, so even though that's kind of similar to Crumbling Catacombs, I think that kind of creates an interesting dynamic. So let's put deep mines here. Yes. Okay, and then the last detail we need for this volume is another resource. So let's draw again. One fun thing about the Downcrawl deck that's nice is because every time you're drawing a card, you're looking for a different prompt. You actually don't really have to worry about like shuffling it or whatever. You can just put cards on the bottom, and when that same card gets back up to the top, it'll be a different prompt. So that is kind of convenient. Delicious in Dungeon Plot, yes. Such a good show. Yeah. Okay, what were we doing? Resource, right. Culture. Oh. Man, I wish the autofocus would more consistently get things. Sorry about that. Is culture abundant or scarce here? I could kind of see a case either way. Like it could be a thing where, like in any big city, naturally you start getting, poets and artists and all the people who aren't directly doing, the sort of industry that the city was formed for. Or it could be a place where this is just a really like, company town kind of vibe. As I say that out loud, I think I prefer the former. I think I like it if the city, the Catacomb City, is big enough that it does actually have like a culture and a whole class of people living here who are not concerned with the mines or the catacombs. They're just living their lives and doing their things and making art and everything. That's kind of interesting. Okay, so despite what you might think, we have abundant culture here. Cool. So we have now defined the 6 main details for Catacomb City. And as we learn more about Catacomb City, on the back of this, we have a space to write local details, which are sort of going to be like specific places or people or kind of, other things we learn about here. And that might, if we were to stay here for a long time, that might split into, multiple cards or whatever. But you can write on the back as a starting point. Cool. Okay, so we fleshed out Catacomb City a bit more, and that's where we are. Okay. We have one unclaimed idea: lost statues. I don't see any obvious place to throw that in. I do sort of want to just keep it around. So we'll see if in this first session here, if anything. Normally at this point you would sort of discard unused ideas, but that's a pretty good one. So we'll keep it around, and maybe we'll find a use for it as we jump in. So, okay. So we are getting into actual play. I should say we're still in the session 0 chapter. So a kind of nice thing this does is it also sort of helps you through your first, couple scenes, couple moments interacting with the game itself, and kind of gives you a structure for that. Especially because in certain modes, like solo mode, it may be a little, different than other kinds of role-playing games you played. So that's kind of a nice feature of that. Lost Statue could be a good character name. Yes. Ghost could too. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. We need to name our mainspring. Yeah, thanks for the reminder. Yeah, we did have Ghost that we discarded from earlier. Oh man, Ghost is kind of a cool name. Uh, yeah. Let's go with that. I like it. I was thinking Dirk for a name. Yeah, also good. I've had some good names playtesting this. Yeah. So we have Ghost. Ooh, I like, again, I don't want to lean too heavy into this trope, but I just sort of like the gothy, like, I'm a witch hunter. I'm just called Ghost. No one knows my real name. It's kind of a nice. I feel like we're gonna puncture this bubble of defensive cool that this character has around him at some point, but maybe that's a good starting point, and we'll build on that. All right, so the curtain rises on Ghost, somewhere in Catacomb City. So to establish the scene, we're going to play our first move, which is called Set the Scene, surprisingly. So this is what moves look like in Downcrawl. I think there's about 20 to 25 of them in total. And a move, this is kind of a concept if you've ever played a Powered by the Apocalypse game. There's a million descendants of those now use moves. It's basically sort of like a little set of instructions or a little mini game that comes up when a certain situation arises. So Set the Scene is a move when you kind of want to learn more detail about a place. And this is actually in, you can see in the upper right, this is in the chapter on impromptu play, which is when you're playing in a group without a GM. A GM could use this move, but this is kind of trying to simulate the job that a GM would normally do for the players of inventing a bunch of interesting details about a place, either in advance or at the moment. This is kind of just some help to have you do that collaboratively, or in this case, as a solo player. Okay, so when you want more detail about the world around you, ask the table, what do we see here? And you can swap that out with any other appropriate question, but that is an appropriate question for this. And anyone can start to improvise an answer, and we can draw a card from the Downcrawl deck and turn to it if we need inspiration. So, Catacomb City, what is Ghost seeing here? I'm just going to see if anything off this card. Black Market catches my eye. So yeah, I think we open on Ghost, in this narrow, winding catacomb that's where the market is. And they were told, that there were some supplies here. Maybe they were told actually that this witch they're tracking, that someone here has info on the witch, and so they've come here. But it's just so claustrophobic. There's just all these vendors crammed in, selling stuff, shouting. It's smelly, it's noisy, it's hot. And Ghost is just like miserable as he's forcing his way through this mass of people in this market. And I think, there's people selling trinkets that are supposedly, from the catacombs, deep beneath the city. Half of them maybe are fake. It's really hard to tell. To food, just kind of like everything. Like there's no order. It's all just crammed in here. Okay, so Set the Scene has a couple little tricks to help us kind of push our creativity along. So there's a couple key phrases we can say. So we can say "that's right" and sort of build on that to add additional detail. We can say "it's even stranger," where we take something and we sort of twist it and make it weirder. And then we can say "we also see" to turn to some new facet, impression, or detail of this place. So I'm going to say it's even stranger, and say that I think actually some of these vendors are like undead. Like I think part of Catacomb City is that one of the valuable things that people can discover when they're doing these sort of like, dungeon delve, tomb robbing missions is, basically like awakened undead. Like they can wake up these, like skeletons or ancient corpses that still have life in them. And there's actually now this like subpopulation of these people in Catacomb City, um, like, yeah, living their lives or living their deaths. So yeah, like not only all of that, but some of these vendors are skeletons with glowing eyes, sort of zombie looking people from the more recently deceased ones. Yeah, I love it. Okay, and then let's do one other key phrase. Let's say we also see, which is sort of designed to kind of, help you come up with some other part of the scene than what you've been talking about. So we've talked about the market. I think, okay, so maybe another detail here. We know that there's this rebellion going on. Maybe another detail is that there's also, in the shoppers here, there's this sort of factionalism starting. So I think maybe there's a thing of, like if you wear a certain color armband or something, you're like allying yourself with the rebellion. Um, so I think maybe this wasn't, except maybe among, the wealthy or the sort of, the poet and artist class we talked about earlier. There wasn't a whole lot of like, attention paid to fashion in this town previously. Like there were a lot of miners, there were a lot of weird treasure hunters. But people recently have become more conscious of what other people are wearing, what colors other people are wearing, and what that signifies. So in addition to all this other weirdness, there's also this kind of tension floating around about that. Um, and Ghost, as someone pretty new, I think, to the city, probably isn't super aware of this. They're maybe sort of like aware of the tension, but I think they're starting to get that creepy sense of like, oh, like, am I wearing a bad color for this neighborhood? Like, did I make a mistake? So that's adding to his unease here. Okay, so we say the scene is set when we're done with this move. And we kind of have a sense of what is happening here as our story begins. Excellent. So then the rules or the session 0 points us to a spot of trouble. Which is sort of coming up with an initial challenge or obstacle in our way. So I kind of have an idea, I think, where this is going. So yeah, I think Ghost hadn't been given a particular vendor who, he heard had some information about a witch that he's chasing. Um, I'm gonna do a thing here. Oh, actually, this was the thing I should have skipped to at the end of character creation in the solo play rules. So we have our map deck and a folk deck. In solo play, we make a third kind of deck, which is called the story deck. And that basically is a way to keep track of ongoing plot threads that you don't want to forget about. It can be things from your backstory that you want to come up. And basically the way the solo deck works is kind of active things that are currently part of your plot you have kind of spread out in front of you. But then when they sort of go back into the background, you put them in a face down deck. And then there are certain points in the game where you'll draw from the story deck to sort of surprisingly reintroduce something back into the story. So it could be some character flaw comes back to bite you at a bad moment. It could be some old friend shows up to save the day. It's a really simple mechanic, but it's really fun and often produces really surprising things in your story. So I'm going to start a story deck card for the witch we're hunting, because I kind of want to define that character. So I think let's just give her a fairly generic name. Chat, if anyone has good witch name ideas, throw them out. But I'm going to write witch who creates monstrous sculptures. Yeah, I think out of Main Springs. Esmer, Agatha, these are both good. I like Esmer. Yeah, let's go with that. Esmer. Okay, so we're hunting Esmer, who's just done terrible things with poor mainsprings, and will pay for it. Okay, so this is kind of active right now, so we're going to keep this here because we've got a lead on Esmer in this market. So I think we come to this. We come to this market person, and there's a move called Greetings Stranger that I'm going to jump to, which is useful when we meet a new NPC. So let's play this. So when you meet a new character, first determine what folk they are by rolling a die. I knew these dice would come in handy for something. If it's even, shuffle and draw from the folk deck. But if it's odd, so are they. This is a folk you've never seen before. So we're going to invent a new folk just on the fly. And this is a really cool part about Downcrawl is you can just do this. And all we're going to know about this folk at first is an appearance. So we're going to ask appearance. And we get simple costume, rags, monochrome, practical. Yeah, okay. Well, that goes really well, I think. So I think this is maybe, I don't want to go too whoops, drop my pen. I don't want to go too Jawa with this, but this is sort of the first thing that jumped to mind is that maybe this is a kind of, traveling merchant folk who are like cowled and don't really show their faces. And that's all we really know about them yet. So I'm just going to write cowled under appearance. So we have one of these cowled merchant people. We don't know what this folk are called yet. We might learn that later. Okay. And we give them a name by grabbing letters and phonemes from the card. I think I discarded that card already, but let's use this one since it's out. This person is named Blurvor. Okay. So Blurvor, this cowled merchant. And I think she sees Ghost approach and says, the mainspring. I was told you'd be coming. And Ghost, I think, maybe is sort of taken aback by this. I'm going to scroll down Greeting Stranger, by the way, just so folks can read the bottom part of it. So this just kind of gives you some help if you need coming up with prompts for, how they act. Let's go ahead and do one of these, actually. Let's ask Reputation to see what I've already forgotten. Blurma? Is that what I said? There's a space where you can write NPC names on here. Blurva? It's Blurva now, whatever I said before. They're now called Blurva. Okay. So attitude. Reputation, sorry. Yeah. Revered. Right down here. Oh, interesting. Okay, so Blurva is actually respected among the merchants. That's why we've been sent to her. It's sort of a thing of like, oh, you should talk to Blurva. Yeah, I like that. So I think Ghost, is kind of gruff, and I think mainsprings, when they're very careful with their movements, right? Because they don't want to unnecessarily wind themselves down. So when they kind of like will strike a pose, and just kind of hold it. So I think Ghost is sort of stands there with his arms crossed, and he's just kind of totally motionless for a second, and he just looks like a puppet, like he doesn't even look like he's alive. And then he kind of narrows his wooden eyes, and he says, I was told that you have information on Esmer, the abominable one, or something. Blurva, kind of looks Ghost over, kind of seeing if she thinks he's someone worthy of this. And she says, I might. Why do you want to know? And as, Ghost says, because she must die. I think this is fairly straightforward. So I'm going to invoke this right here. Do they know, or are they willing to tell? Ask the Oracle. So one of the other fields on the cards is an Oracle. And if you haven't played solo games before, or an oracle is typically just a way to get an answer to a yes or no question, because this is a thing in solo games that is, difficult to know, because in a traditional game you can just ask your game master, but in a solo game you might not be able to do that. Another way we could play this is, we could make a skill check or something at this point, which we will do fairly soon, I think, to introduce how that works in Sliver of Fate. But let's just try using the oracle for this. So is Blurva willing to tell us what she knows about Esmer? So we will draw a card. The oracle says no, because come on, focus. No, because someone or something is interfering. Oh, interesting. I think maybe the interference here is Esmer. I think Esmer's maybe threatened, right? Made a threat that if this information gets out, it'll be bad. Witches can probably curse people, right? That seems like a thing that they can probably do. Yeah, let's say that. So, so I think Blurva, kind of narrows her eyes and is like, I see many things, but not all of them should be spread around. I can't, are you going to buy something? Or are you going to get out of here? And it's kind of trying to be dismissive. Okay, so now I think let's invoke a skill check. So, because Ghost obviously really wants this information. So how that works in Sliver of Fate is we have a move called Face a Challenge. So when you face a straightforward challenge, state your desired outcome clearly. So I think we want to convince Blurva to tell us, what she knows about Esmer, the witch. Then pick a sensible approach and describe how you will solve the problem this way. And so as a reminder, the approaches are forceful, focused, flashy, and fast. We're good at flashy, but one of the things about Sliver of Fate is that whenever you use a particular approach, you mark it. And I got some paper clips that I'm going to do to mark things for this. And once you have marked all four of your approaches, you can clear the marks to get a fate point. So that sort of incentivizes you to want to, use your full range of skills over time. You can always use your best one, but if you've used it, since that happened, you won't get to mark it again. So forceful seems pretty obvious. Flashy, kind of, maybe. I think let's go with forceful, just to keep things straightforward. So I'm going to mark that, the paperclip. Okay, so by default, challenge is tricky, so that is the case here. There are a couple different difficulties: easy, tricky, difficult, and foolish. If this challenge is especially hard, we would increase the difficulty level, but no, I don't think this is especially hard, so that's fine. Okay, so what we have is a tricky challenge, and we can either use the dice or the Downcrawl deck. Let's go ahead and use the dice just for a change of pace. Give this poor deck a rest. So we're going to roll 2d6. Okay, and the way you look at rolls... Oh, actually, in this case, it doesn't matter. Normally in Downcrawl, you read things as two separate numbers top to bottom because we're always descending in the deep, deep down. So this would be 6-6. Some systems call this a D66 because you don't add the numbers, you move them together. But in Sliver of Fate, we actually are adding them together. So this is a 12, which is the best possible result, which is fantastic. On a 8+, yes, and say how you succeed. I think Ghost is tightly wound, let's say, and can be very intimidating when he wants to be. So I think I think this merchant is kind of trying to give him the brush off. And I think in this just like lightning burst, this, I'm doing hand gestures and you can only see them from the top, so it probably looks weird. But this like lightning burst of energy, he just like shoots at a hand and like grabs her by the neck and pins her against the wall. And just sort of like, a wound spring, suddenly unwinding. And just says to this merchant, something like, if you're on the side of the witches, then you're on the wrong side. Tell me what you know. Is, surprisingly intimidating for a puppet. I think this is a good sort of character defining moment for Ghost. And so I think the merchant's like, oh, all right, I'll tell, you know. Um, so let's find inspiration to figure out the piece of information she knows. So this is another kind of solo play or impromptu play thing we can do. Let me get to my move list. Um, and this is just a quick way to get an idea or a prompt to help us with something. I think what we want here is maybe an evocative, well, maybe, yeah, let's go with that, evocative word or concept. So what is it that Blurva knows about Esmer? So we're gonna ask idea. We get wasteland. Okay. So yeah, I think she says, you know, the witch has gone into the wastelands. You'll never find her. You know, no one can track anyone there. And here we're going to create a new volume, which whenever something just comes up in the story that sounds like a new volume, you can just create one. So all we know about this place so far is that the terrain is wasteland. And again, this is kind of another fun thing. Like these, there isn't a fixed set of what any of these can be. Like the prompts have a set, right? But you can totally just make up whatever makes sense here. So we've learned about this new terrain type called, that has a terrain wasteland. And I think Ghost, you know, maybe is not from these parts, so doesn't know, you know, which wasteland in particular is being talked about. So, you know, they're like, Ghost is like, you know, what wasteland, where? And, you know, Blurva making something up, or rather, I'm making something up for her, says, the Crimson Wasteland, of course. And that's what we will name this place. Cool. Crimson Wasteland. I will add it to the map as well. Maybe over here. We don't know how to get there yet. So this volume is what's called unconnected. We don't know any routes leading to it. Yet. We will figure out how to get there. Excellent. Okay, I'm going to leave Crimson Wasteland here in my active cards because it feels like it's going to come up again soon. I can discard this one. Cool. Okay, so I think we've learned what we're going to learn from this merchant, this cowled merchant, whose people we might learn more about later. I'm going to put that card back in the folk deck. Cool. So this is good news and bad news, right? So Ghost now has a lead on where Esmer has gone, but knows nothing about the Crimson Wasteland or how to get there. So that seems like the next point of business is to start figuring that out. So I'm going to jump to a move called in a volume. Here it is, which is just kind of an index for all the things you can do while we're in a volume. So there's generally two modes in Downcrawl. You're either in a volume and doing stuff, or you're on a journey between volumes, and you'll kind of alternate between those two kind of modes of play. But there's a lot of different things we could do when we're in a volume. A thing we want to do right now, though, is we want to update our map and learn about new routes. So we're going to visit the map room. So every volume has a map room, as this move text says. It might be a public message board where people post notices. It might be, just like an ancient archive, a cobweb tower. But there's some place where travelers share records or store information about the world, because this is a huge part of living in the deep down, is navigating, these complex shifting routes between places. When you first visit the map room, describe it. Remove the current volume from the map deck and shuffle it, layout up to 5 cards face up. These are the archives here. So because we've just kind of started, we have less than 5 cards. So all the places we know about are going to be here. So I'm just going to mix these up. We're going to put them face down. So there are 3 places in this map room. Now, one thing you might notice is because we've written on the back of some of these, you can sort of tell what they are. Generally speaking, if you get to a point where it actually matters that you draw something at random and you don't know what it is, you can just kind of take the cards and, hold them under the table or out of your sight and move them around and draw one at random. A lot of times it doesn't actually matter, but that's how you deal with that if that comes up. Okay, when you do research in the map room, choose an option. and repeat when you like until you run out of archives or tack, because some of these cost tack. Okay, so our options are we can draw a blind from the archive, or we can spend 1 tack to take a specific card from the archive and learn something about it. So yeah, I think that's what we want to do because we really want to learn more about the Crimson Wasteland. So I'm going to spend 1 of our tack, which are up here off the map, to pull the Crimson Wasteland. We'll keep these other 2 in the archive. And now I get to play an option that's possible for this volume card. So there's a bunch of things we can do. We can read the guidebook to learn more about it. We can find out if it has a connection to somewhere. That seems probably like what we need to do. So actually, I think this option is what we want to play. So secret route. If this volume is unconnected to any other, which is currently true, draw from the map deck or archive until you get a place it can connect to and add a route between them. Okay, and because we have a fairly new map, we're a little limited in our options here. I drew Lone Mountain, and that's fine because that's sheltered, so that can take another connection. So we have learned through the map room here in Catacomb City that the Crimson Wasteland is connected to Lone Mountain. Okay, cool. So we could spend our last tack to try to learn more about the Crimson Wasteland, but I don't think we want to do that because tack is kind of hard to come by, and it's a really useful resource for journeys. So, but what we can do for free is draw something at random, and we have a 1 in 3 chance of learning something about the Crimson Wasteland, and even if we don't, we'll learn something useful anyway. So I think let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to shuffle these cards under the table. I don't have to spend tack on this option. I drew the Ooze Hollows. Okay, well, not what I wanted, but that's fine. Let's read the guidebook to learn something about the Ooze Hollows. So we know that it's the lair of an ancient beast and it's cramped burrows. Let's learn another theme about it, I think. So we have anarchy or mecha. Mecha is really interesting to imagine this. Wow. Yeah, are there people who worship the ancient ooze beast? I think there are. Yeah, I think there are. Well, that takes us in a different direction. The mecha of the Ooze Hollows. Yeah, I think if it's like we sort of mentioned like seasonal thing like hibernation. So maybe it's a thing where, when the season is right, all the followers of the Ooze Beast gather to witness its emergence from the burrows in which it slumbers. Yeah, very good. All right, well, this is a pretty typical visit to the map room. You learn some things that you wanted to learn and some things that you didn't expect, but all was interesting. Okay. So, and I was kind of being laissez-faire with this, but what we should actually have done here is each time I use one of these cards, I remove it from the archive. So that's why we couldn't just keep doing that over and over again and drawing cards until we run out, because we could only play a maximum of three moves here. Okay, I think that's good for now. The question, I think, for Ghost is whether he wants to depart on a journey now, immediately, even though he only has one tack for the Crimson Wasteland. And we haven't gotten to journey mechanics yet, but because it's now connected to the place we are, even indirectly, it's going to be easier than if it was totally unconnected. So we have improved the odds of a successful journey. But it is a little alarming to leave with only one tack. However, I think it's going to be really fun for Ghost to get lost and have a bad journey on the way. So, and I think actually maybe this is another kind of character moment defining about him, is that he is something who kind of rushes into things unwisely. And this, again, maybe ties in with being a mainspring. It's like, I got to act now while I'm still wound up, I see we're going to get a lot of metaphorical charge, I think, out of this group of people. So yeah, I think Ghost is not going to hang around in Catacomb City. He's just going to strike out for the wasteland while the trail's hot. Yes. Okay. Cool. So when we get ready for a journey, we have this move called plan your journey. So when you prepare for a journey to another volume, determine the number of journey steps by beginning with the destination's remoteness. Okay. So the Crimson Wasteland, do we still have the card out? No, we don't. I need to grab it. We'll actually put Catacomb City in the volume deck because we're leaving it. Get Crimson Wasteland out. Okay, so... Oh, and that's right. It's a new place, so we need to define the remoteness. I think sheltered, which is kind of the default, is fine. So sheltered volumes can have a maximum of 2 routes, and the default is it takes 3 journey steps. This is printed on this card, and it's written up here in the rules too. So it's sheltered. So we're going to start with 3 journey steps. If the destination is connected to your current volume, which via a series of routes, so it is. It's not directly connected, but there is a series of routes to it. Add the length of the shortest path. So that's 1 to Lone Mountain and 1 to Crimson Wasteland, so 2. So we're at 5 now. If you know less than 4 details about it, oh, this journey is not going to go well. Add 1. Okay, so we're at 6 journey steps. So this is pretty rough. If anyone you travel with has been there before, subtract 1. So this is an interesting option. Could we find a guide here in Catacomb City before we leave to the Wasteland to make the journey a little easier? Nah. I'm just gonna go with my initial impulse. we're gonna rush into danger. I think this might be a learning journey for ghosts. We'll see what happens. Yeah, so did I say 5? 3, 4, 5? Yeah. Oh no, and we know less than 4 details, so 6. Yeah. 6 journey steps. Okay. Okay, so now what we're gonna do, I'll scroll down again so you can see all this, is we're gonna take an index card. If you haven't noticed, in solo play of this, you use a lot of index cards. And we're going to track this journey by labeling it. So this is a journey from Catacomb City to the Crimson Wasteland. Okay, add empty boxes down the left side of the card, 1 per line, equal to the number of journey steps. So we've got 6. This is a little long for a journey. Ideally, you want something more like 4. So this is going to be a rough one. As your journey progresses, in each box you will either mark success by checking the box or mark failure by Xing it out. And then at the very end of the journey, we will basically the number of successes and failures on the journey so far is going to affect the kind of ultimate result of the journey and how it ends up. Okay, but we'll get there when we do it. And I'll just do this to mark the final box so we remember when we get there. This little note here is kind of fun. So this is actually a venture, and you can use this to track a lot of different things. Again, this is a thing that you could do in kind of game mastered Downcrawl, but it's kind of trying to add some scaffolding that you're missing without having a game master. So ventures are just kind of things that require multiple rolls, and you sort of track success or failure. And then if you have more successes or failures at the end of the venture, you get sort of a bonus on your final roll, or vice versa if you have more failures than successes. So a journey is just kind of a specialized type of venture, basically. Okay, we're going to begin our journey with a day on the road. I briefly, though, want to talk about the question that's come up a few times, is how do mainsprings stay wound up? Because it feels too easy if they can just wind themselves. Do they have to, I wonder, man, I was going to say something like, is there like a traveler society or like, fellow mainsprings help each other out? But I kind of feel like this, there may be more diffuse in the world than that. Like it's kind of rare to bump across another mainspring in the wild because so many of them are working for witches, are being terrorized by witches maybe. So I don't think it's that. Yeah, maybe it's just a thing where you just have to kind of find a kindly person, and it's like kind of awkward to ask, right? It's kind of socially awkward. Well, can you wind my spring? Um, but yeah. Okay. I just kind of wanted to think about that a little bit. I think I don't actually want to play out another scene with an NPC because I want to show you guys how journey rules work. But let's say that this has sort of happened. This is the part about setting out that Ghost really hates. He kind of has to like, go to a tavern and make a friend, and he can't really drink, so that that makes that difficult. But we'll say, for simplicity, that he was able to find someone to wind him for this journey. Okay, and he's just gonna set out. I don't think he needs to eat, so we're not really gonna worry about supplies for him. But I think maybe the next time, if we think he's getting wound down, we might spend a little more time on how that plays out, what that means for him. All right. So, this move is a day on the road. When each day of a journey begins, first determine the terrain you pass through by picking the first option that matches. If this is the first day of the journey, and it is, pick a terrain detail from your starting volume. So, yeah, so catacombs, right? I think, what was the other terrain we had for Catacomb City? Mines. Yeah, let's just stick with catacombs. So yeah, the city, is only a part of the catacombs, but they spread out for a long way around it. So you kind of it gets less and less crowded, but you're still sort of, working through your way through these old dusty, well looted tunnels, as you're leaving the city. Okay, so we're going to note the terrain, alongside the next unmarked box on the journey, card. So our first day, we're passing through catacombs. Okay, now play the first move that matches from the list below. And I'm pretty sure the first move that matches is Journey On. So basically, these are all kind of special case things, but typically what we're doing each day is journeying on. Although, if we have no attack, we're lost. So that might come up here in this journey. We'll find out. But we're not lost yet, so we're going to journey on. All right, so when the group pushes on toward their destination, pick a leader for today's travel. That's pretty easy since Ghost is the only one in the company. Explain how their unique skills or abilities will help them guide the way through this territory. And prepare to make a roll. So Ghost is a hunter. That, seems pretty straightforward. He's spent a lot of time hunting. I think, he's maybe not the best with catacombs because of the claustrophobia and everything. But he was just wound up. He's a professional. I think he's got this. I think he'll be fine. Okay, and then we're gonna roll 2d6 with the following modifiers. So let's see if any of these apply. If you've led a day of travel since the journey began, no, because this is the first day of the journey. If there are multiple active dangers, we don't have any dangers yet. I'll explain what a danger is the first time we get one, but that's fine for now. And then +1 for each point of attack spent on this roll. So here's a big reason it's nice to start a journey with a lot of attack, because you can really juice your odds of success on journey rolls. But if we spend this last attack, we will be lost. So I don't think we want to spend it yet. So we're just going to roll straight up 2d6 and see what happens. And again, this is a case where we're adding them together. The reason that's coming up so much in this is that most of the places where you don't do that are the things that we're using the cards for. So if we weren't using the Downcrawl deck, we would be using the individual numbers method more. Okay, so 6 and 3 is 9. So what do we got here? You find a route, but a rough one. Choose one. Either we make little progress, but avoid getting lost. Explain why this terrain is so difficult, but what hopeful sign you uncover. Or you force your way through, but attract unwanted attention. And add a danger. Yeah, I don't think we want to take a failure yet. So I'm going to say we go with the second option. So the path isn't super clear, but Ghost is just kind of, striding through anyway, not really taking care to be careful or caring who sees him. He's just kind of going for it. So we're going to mark a success on this day's travel. So we'll put a checkbox here. But we're going to add a danger. and explain what portent you see of a lurking threat. So let's jump here to add a danger. When a move tells you to add a danger, ask portent for an ominous sign or hint of impending trouble. Okay, and portents are one of the prompts that's not on the Downcrawl deck, mostly because of space reasons, because they're a lot longer, and they tie into the encounter system, which is kind of a separate thing. So we are going to roll a portent 5/4, which is Trail of Blood that suddenly stops. I'm sure it's fine. Okay, and then we can roll or choose at random one of these. I'm just going to choose 2/6. Let's see. Let's put dangers on a card too. You can't just write them right on the map, but then if you have to cross a lot of... Well, yeah, we'll deal with that when we come to it. Let's write them on the map. Because we got a lot of room over here. Okay, so we've got a Trail of Blood. 2/6. What does that number mean? We'll find out. So dangers are basically things that are starting to bother us on a journey. Things that are stalking us, dangerous terrain we're getting close to. And each portent has these numbers correspond to sort of different dangers that might reveal themselves lately. So we don't know which particular danger that this is a portent of, but we might find out. So that's a bad portent. Let's jump back to where we were. There we go. Okay. There's not already 3 dangers. If this danger later reveals itself, ask threat with the danger's index number. Right. So, okay. So we've made good progress today, but there's some sort of ominous signs. We've got this Trail of Blood. That's fine. I'm sure it'll all work out just great. Okay. And now we're going to continue to a travel encounter, which is something that happens each day on the road. So when a journey move triggers an encounter, roll 3d6. The top die becomes the indicator die, 312, which reveals the type of encounter from the list below. Increase it by the number of dangers, if any, before reading the result. So we have 1 danger, so we're going to change this from 3 to 4. And then the bottom 2 dice basically tell us what we do with this 4. So we'll start with the 4. So 4 to 5 is a challenge. So use the encounter dice to ask challenge and choose one of the given options. Okay, so let's do that. So 1, 2. So we can choose between one of these things. Well, we're just leaving an area that has catacombs and mines. So this one jumps out to me. Ornate, long abandoned railroad cars. Okay. So this is sort of basically a context that then something is going to happen in. So then the second part of this is the most complicated encounter, by the way. The first one we came up with is the most trickiest one. It's usually a little simpler than this, but that's fine. Just like Ghost, we're diving totally into the deep end. Okay. So re-roll the 2 encounter die. So that's these 2. And we use the top die to get opportunity and the bottom die for a threat. So 1 is treasure. Okay, so there's the opportunity of treasure. And then 6 is unwanted complications. So what we have merging these 3 things. Sorry, that was off screen when I said that. 6 on threat is unwanted complications. So as we're sort of on the outskirts of the city, we come to this old, train car that's very ornate, but looks abandoned. And we know there's opportunity of so I'm saying I, as the sort of player, not the character, know there's a potential for Ghost to get treasure here, but there's a threat that this is going to sort of complicate the situation in some way. So, and this is what a challenge is. It's an opportunity and a threat in a context, basically. So the question, I think, for Ghost is, oh man, so he's really short on tack, and a railroad car seems like the kind of thing that might have some tack in it, right? There might be maps, there might be useful intel or even just useful equipment for this mission. But it's kind of rare for anything to be just abandoned and free floating in the deep, deep down. But I think he's going to risk it. He's going to go for it. So let's say he explores this minecart, and we're going to ask the Oracle, does anything bad happen? And I'm going to say, when you ask the Oracle, if you think the answer is particularly likely or unlikely, you can draw 2 cards and take the best or the worst. So I think we're going to do that. I think it's likely that something bad is here. So we're going to draw 2 oracles, and we'll take the worst. Well, we got a yes and a no, so clearly the no is the worst. It says, no, but a threat or difficulty eases. I think the only active threat right now is this trail of blood. So maybe what this means is that this mystery is solved and that the trail of blood is actually leading to this car. So I think as Ghost goes up to the car, he sees it and he kind of goes into full ghost mode. Springs taut as silently as a wooden and metal being can. He kind of creeps up to the door. And I think he throws it open. And inside, he sees something so terrible and so alarming that we will have to wait for the next session to find out what it is. Because it's almost the top of the hour. And I do need to stop at the end of this block. So we will leave that as a cliffhanger. What does Ghost find inside this creepy abandoned rail car in the middle of the catacombs? We'll find out next time. Thanks to folks who joined me on the stream. I hope you appreciated this glimpse into how new version of Downcrawl works. I think I'm going to keep doing this, like I mentioned, on Thursday nights at the same time. So keep an eye on the Twitch page for details, but that's kind of my plan for now. There's sort of more mechanics that we haven't gotten to yet. We'll sort of fully play out how journeys work, how getting lost works, which is a whole thing that's extremely likely, I think, to happen to Ghost. And then once we get to a volume, we sort of immediately left, but there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with volumes. There's a mechanic around generating kind of story hooks and complications to get into. More cool stuff to get into. We haven't gotten into fungal drugs, which is a whole thing in this game. You can find wild mushrooms and distill them into potions, basically. Lots of fun stuff to get into next time. Thanks so much for joining me on the stream. If you're intrigued about Downcrawl, there's a link on the Twitch page or on the BackerKit page to find out where you can sort of sign up to be notified when that campaign goes live. I'm super excited about the campaign. There's going to be a lot of cool stuff. I've come up with, I think, some play aids that people are going to think are really neat that kind of help expand, your core experience. See you next time.